USAID, what they do a lot of the times is they will fund these so-called nonviolent civil resistance movements, which this is a technique for overthrowing a government where, there's two ways you can overthrow a government. One of them is a top-down military coup. You basically bribe a sufficient quorum of the country's military brass, and then they control the tanks, and so they can simply topple the government through military force or threats of military force. That began to be phased out. It's still done from time to time, but the main way we do this now are so-called people-powered revolutions. They have a sort of patina of democracy to them, where the State Department and USAID will capacity build. They will run hundreds of millions of dollars to astroturf a political movement in a country. And part of the linchpin of this are street protests that create a kind of anarcho-tyranny force on the streets that will break up meetings, that will block highways, that will block transportation, that will shut down industrial industries. They'll do mass walkouts for the miners, for the hospital workers. They will surround parliament buildings or occupy federal buildings. And so the idea is media then reports on that as being what the people really want, because they're the ones who are out on the street demanding the government in power transition to a new government to be responsive to the people, because this is democracy. Not reporting on the fact that these people are all being funded by the U.S. government. They're being funded by USAID, funded by state, and directed through their leaders by intelligence back channels. But that gets held up as democracy. And then when the police respond to these people throwing Molotov cocktails in police cars, that gets called an authoritarian crackdown. And so that then allows the U.S. government and its international partners to put sanctions on that government in order to economically cripple them, in order to put the people into further deprivation, where they're now even angrier at the government. And the government has less money to pay the police or the military to contain these CIA, USAID-funded riots on the streets, but they call it nonviolent civil resistance in order. This is the same thing we saw in 2020. This whole framing technique around calling it a protest, not a riot. Even though everyone sees everything's on fire, but you call it mostly peaceful, because that's how you salvage the diplomatic norms and standards around it being a pro-democracy movement rather than an act of friggin' terrorism.
Do you think that it's being turned on the United States right now? That
they're literally articulating how it is. Yes,
like
that's what you've been
like
talking
to
about.
the point where it would, because that makes me think it's not an American thing, this USAID thing, because if they're willing to create a civil war in the United States with the same technique to overthrow the government, why would our own country do that to ourselves? Or is it controlled literally by the Bank for International Settlements?
In order to stamp out populism, to achieve democratic stability, because no one can run against them.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.